control, which
Yes,
is
I think you
prison-like.
really hit that. I think you're absolutely right. And I think that the other concern we're hearing from parents and teachers, you know, a lot of people don't feel like they can even openly talk about some of these issues, which I think is a shame because we've got to be able to talk about these to find the best solution. But parents are very concerned about children wearing masks. And I wanted to ask you particularly, you know, as all the research, everything that you know, are you concerned for children to be mandated or forced to wear masks? Could that be harmful for them? If so, why? Could you kind of share a little bit about
Yes.
that?
Yes, I've done a lot of research on this. The answer needs to be divided into two parts, okay? The first part, I want to say that masks, it's demonstrated scientifically without any doubt that masks do not work, and they cannot work, okay? First thing. And I've written a large review of the science on this. It was published on ResearchGate. I posted it there, and it's been read on ResearchGate more than 130,000 times. And it's been cited by various sources all around the world. It's a very thorough review of all the science about masks. And it demonstrates without a doubt, and anybody can go and read it for free, that masks do not work, basically. And it reviews the science of why they cannot work, why they shouldn't work, if you understand the transmission mechanism through these fine aerosol particles that I was telling you about. So that's one thing. Masks don't work. So it's obscene that the state, whether it's the state of California or the Canada or anybody, would force individuals to wear masks, supposedly to protect them, in circumstances where it's demonstrated scientifically that masks don't work.
Wow.
Look, there have been many randomized controlled studies of wearing masks versus not wearing masks, and what are called meta-analyses of these studies. There are many of them, and none of them have been able to find any reduction of risk of being infected with one of these viral respiratory diseases through wearing a mask or even a respirator, which is these much more fancy masks, you know, these so-called N95s.
Wow.
Even health workers, it doesn't reduce their risk of getting it when they're wearing those N95s all the time. So the science is clear. Masks do not work. There is no when you make an order like that, when your governor says you're going to have to wear masks, it's not science-based. That's not a science-based order whatsoever. Okay,
Okay, so the science
that's
doesn't
just
support that. You're saying
that's
the science doesn't
arbitrary.
support it.
That's arbitrary authority. Okay, saying you have to wear a mask.
So
Okay.
is it possible, so you're saying the science doesn't support wearing the mask, that it doesn't work, then another part of it would be though, if children are forced to wear a
Is
mask,
it harmful?
harmful. What
That's
would
right.
you say about that?
So that was the second part of my answer. So first of all, and there's two parts to that as well. Anytime the state arbitrarily forces you to do something, that's harmful to society and to democracy itself.
Right.
And if you accept a rule that is not science-based and that is arbitrary, that is just purely applying authority, when you accept that in society, you move that much closer to a totalitarian system.
Mm.
And there are scientific studies that demonstrate that if people habituate themselves to accepting arbitrary rules, then the society as a whole moves towards totalitarianism. So just in terms of the health of the society as a whole,
Mm.
you're slowly marching towards a more totalitarian state by accepting these arbitrary rules from the state. Okay, that's one thing. But
Okay.
then your question is, what about in terms of their health?
Right. Yes, for children, because I think parents are, you know, if they're working parents who have full-time jobs and are homeschooling their children or trying to do distance learning, I think it's putting them in a very difficult position if they are forced to send their children back to school and the requirement is masks. And so
Yeah.
I would love to hear about if it could
Well,
impact
there's no scientific evidence. Look, there was a study that showed the only negative thing that's been demonstrated is that healthcare workers who wore masks got headaches much more frequently than the ones who didn't. There is one study, a big study, a randomized controlled trial that shows that. Okay?
Why would that be? Is it for
because
lack
it can
of oxygen?
well, presumably because it constricts your breathing
Mm-hmm.
and it's uncomfortable, but that is a definite result that they had a much higher incidence of headaches from wearing them. But these are healthcare workers who had to wear N95 respirators, and it was part of a demand of their job. Okay, and they got way more headaches than the ones that didn't wear them. Okay, fine. That's a health hazard. But we haven't studied, what about regular masks that people wear all the time, that are dirty, that you take off, that you rub, that you might put down, might put back on, that aren't necessarily washed, that rub against things, and kids, we don't know. It hasn't been studied. Okay, it hasn't been studied I listed a whole bunch of potential liabilities in my article, but
Mm-hmm.
none of them have been studied.
Well,
Okay,
and back to
but
the point that if they don't work, then that's already,
yeah,
that's a problem in and of itself. But then the part two is if it could be harmful in other ways.
right. But there's a part three.
Part three. What's the part three?
The part three is try getting kids to wear masks.
Right. Absolutely.
It's insane. That
Yeah.
is an insane proposition.
Right.
Okay. It's on your face, for God's sakes.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
Like healthcare workers can't keep them on. They move them around. They take them off. They're uncomfortable. They don't like them. It constricts them. It's their, you rebreathe in your own air more frequently.
Right.
It
Absolutely.
stops the breathing somewhat. It stops your ability to speak clearly. It has all kinds of negative effects as a person. You don't see the person's face anymore. You don't see their facial expression. They'll be making all kinds of grimaces to the teacher behind the mask. They're going to be taking their masks off, being told very, very authoritatively by teachers to put them back on. They'll have to be trained on how to wear masks, how not, what do you do when the little thing breaks off, how often do you put a fresh mask on, where do you put the old mask, how do you throw them away, how do you wash them. It's just,
it's a nightmare. It's a
whoever invented this idea that you could tell all the students in a public school to wear masks is some kind of a person that is disconnected from the school reality and from the reality of kids.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
It just makes no sense at all.
Yeah.
That's what I think about that.
Well, I appreciate that because I think that's a huge concern here. So I think it's important for people to hear from an expert. And really, from what you're saying, we'll get that article from you and make sure that we can share it with our audience so that they have access to what you already put together about masks. But I really appreciate that. I think you're right on. And I want to kind of segue into another thing that we're concerned about.